Hello, it's Ariel. I'm going to do my video today about my story, and I just wanted to start off by saying something that I typically do in general when I make posts about things that might potentially trigger someone. So this is going to be a trigger warning. I'm going to be discussing, not in detail, but just mentioning things such as addictions, drug abuse, alcohol, eating disorders. I'm also going to be mentioning some things such as sexual abuse and trauma. Like I said, I'm not going into detail. I don't feel like that is necessary or helpful. So I just wanted to warn everybody that if that's something that you struggle with and could potentially be harmful to you, then I just want to give you that option now to either prepare yourself or maybe right now you're not really in the place to be able to receive my message or my story. And I just wanted to give everybody a warning to start off with. So, how I'm going to start is just going back to my early childhood and obviously moving on until the present now. And I will be making other videos that go into depth and detail. So, I'm not going to dive too deep into the different subjects themselves. I'll just let you know when they happened, when they started. But that, like more of a massive story, I'll just do in videos to come. So I'm going to start with when I was born. I'm an only child, and I was born into a family that has a big history of mental illness. And at the time, my mom was and still is sick. She has a muscle disease that she has struggled with her entire life, and she was told that she would never be able to have children, more than likely, just because she wasn't well enough. And my mom got married when she was 30, I believe, so kind of later in life, and she had me when she was 31. And it was something that was amazing because it shouldn't have happened. She was just too sick, but she's always loved children and she wanted a ton, but she got me. And during her pregnancy, because she was sick, basically what happened was her uterus was started to calcify with me inside. So my living space, if you want to call it, was just getting smaller and smaller, and it was making me sick, and I wasn't getting the nourishment that I needed because my mom just, her body couldn't handle it. So when I was born, I was a preemie. I believe I was born a little bit early, but not like too early. It was just the fact that my mom's body wasn't healthy enough, which is why I was premature. And so I was born, and I am the only child that my parents have. And things have always been tense as far as I can remember. It was a very, it wasn't like it's not a horrible childhood that I had. It's just that I really do believe that I was born coming from mental illness. I believe that I was born, and that's like, it was destined for me to have mental illness. That's just kind of how I perceive it. So when I was little, I remember my dad being very absent. He was addicted to his work, and that's something that he felt was very important, I guess, to him. And so I remember him being gone most of the time, always being at work, coming home either late, or when he would come home, it would be straight to bed. So my mom and I got a really close bond from the very beginning, especially since they didn't think that I was going to make it as a baby. And from then on, I believe that our codependency started there. It was just the two of us basically from the beginning. And growing up that way, I was attached to her hip, and I was taught that you never have to do anything alone. My mom was always there for me. She still is my rock. She is somebody that I don't know how I would have survived without her, as much as I can see how the codependency later played on in my life. She is literally my best friend. She is my everything. along with my husband, but my mom is my partner in life. She literally helped me through and helps me through everything, seeing as how she's been there since day one. And growing up, I just remember feeling like I was walking on eggshells because my dad was, I used the term rage-a-hall, because it was always just anger all the time. And so growing up, I was a perfectionist. I think partially because that's what I learned from him, was just doing everything perfectly. That's how he lived his life, and I wanted his attention, his affection, and I just got that trait. So in school, I had to do the best. I had to be the best in education all the time. And I worked very hard as a child, and in school, always excelling, always being in honors, and just I did very well in school. And growing up, I remember by age 5 feeling depressed. I just remember feeling very, I guess, like anxiety as well as depression, just from everything that was going on and the pressure that I put on myself on top of the messages that I was getting from my dad. And so that just kind of turned into basically my being so hard on myself. I was never good enough for me, but I also felt like I wasn't good enough for my dad. And these are the messages that I got. I'm not saying that he ever verbally said that. It's just that's how I felt. And so by the time I was 8 years old, I remember my eating disorder starting. And that's kind of the first illness, I guess you could say, that I remember cropping up. I used food as a comfort. So it was whenever I felt anxious, whenever I felt angry, whenever I felt any kind of emotion, I turned to food immediately. And that was just something that I clearly remember, because it was me going and getting like bags of chips and just eating and eating and eating, and my mom telling me, don't, you're going to ruin your, spoil your dinner. And it wasn't the fact that I was hungry. I wasn't hungry at all. It was just filling and filling and filling and not stopping and literally zoning out. And so now when I look back, I can totally tell and see that that was where my binge eating started. And so that continued on. And by the time I was, I think it started when I was 12. No, I should go back. When I was about, about 12 or 13, I remember purging happening. And I remember, so it was now binge purge. And that was the eating disorder that I had. But in terms of my life, I started to get older, and obviously being in school, you get exposed to a lot of things from kids and things that they see around their parents. So by the time I was 13, I remember my dad having a collection of liquor, and when my friends would come over, we would steal some of the liquor from it. And I remember having that overwhelming sense of just relief, the checking out that you got when you drink. And my mom even says it to this day, when I do or start anything, I'm all or nothing. It's black and white. So I remember from that moment just feeling like I want this in my life. Like being an adult, you get a drink. I couldn't wait for that. And it just the buildup of everything, and not knowing how to set boundaries or not knowing how to express how I was feeling. It was through the food and then the alcohol that I was started to express my emotions, because I didn't know how to say it out loud, and I was afraid to. I didn't know how to express. And growing up, I remember constantly being compared to my friends or in family. My grandmother always comparing me to my cousin. I remember her telling me how much bigger I was than her, and I wasn't in any kind of activities. My cousin did a lot of dancing. She did taekwondo. She did everything. And so she was very petite growing up. She was very tiny, and I wasn't in anything. And on top of the binging, it obviously made me gain weight, but we're children. Like, as we grow, we go through, we put on weight so that we can grow. Like, that's how it works. And at the time when you're that young, you don't know that. All you know is people telling you, oh my gosh, you're so much bigger than your cousin, or oh my gosh, she's gained a lot of weight, or everything. Those messages you're getting and you don't know. You think something is wrong with me. Oh my God, like, everybody is telling me that I'm fat, and what does that mean? And it's that message stuck in my head. And so I felt less than, I felt not enough again. And it just, that was a pattern in my life. And it was really hard for me to hear that. And so I numbed out more. So by the time I was 13, I was also starting to smoke weed with my friend. And that's something that was very okay in her family. Her dad and her mom both smoked. And so it wasn't, we never got punished. Like, it was so easy to just come over and we would smoke. And that feeling on top of just letting go was amazing to me at that time. And I felt powerful, and I felt like I'm doing something like other kids aren't doing. And it made me feel different. It made me feel powerful. And little did I know it would lead down a road that I never wanted to go. So when I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed, well, actually I was 12. When I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. It was so severe. My back was literally in the shape of an S. And I actually went into the doctor for my loose joints and for knee pain. And the doctor told me that I wasn't standing up straight, and that he sent me to a back doctor. They took x-rays, and then they informed me that I needed to have surgery, that eventually the organs inside and my lungs were just going to get crushed and I wouldn't make it. So when I was 12, I was frightened. I thought that was the end of the world. I never wanted to have surgery. I kept telling my mom, no, no, no. But of course, as a parent, when you hear that your child could possibly die from something, you hear that your child is frightened, but you're doing what you know needs to happen. So the day after my 13th birthday, I had a spinal fusion. And honestly, from that moment on, everything changed in my life. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't change it because I needed the surgery and it saved my life. However, it also completely turned everything around. So from the time I was 13, I being in the hospital and having a spinal fusion, I couldn't do anything on my own. I had to walk the first day of surgery when they woke me up and start moving, but I literally couldn't do anything on my own. And my mom had to bathe me. She had to help me go to the bathroom. She had to help me stand. She had to cook for me. She did everything. And I was so weak, I had a morphine pump because of the pain. And from that, unintentionally, I lost a bunch of weight. And I was getting all of these praises and just the acknowledgement of, oh my God, you look fantastic. You look like a model, is what everybody kept telling me. And it was like, no one's ever said this about me. It's always been, I was the chunkier one. I was chubby. I was different. And now they're telling me I'm beautiful and that I've lost all this weight and like I have a power. And that's when it went downhill. And I started restricting unintentionally in the beginning just because of the amount of pain I was in. I couldn't eat a lot. But then going back to school, I actually became vegetarian. And it was not for eating disorder reasons. It was just because a friend of mine showed me, it's kind of funny, but he showed me a PETA video, and I grew up on a farm. Like, we killed our own, well, I did not kill the cows, but I grew up on a farm. Like, we literally raised everything, and it wasn't something that I ever thought about. Like, I just ate meat. But then my friend showed me this video, and from that moment on, it was an eye-opening experience, and I never ate meat again. So for 14 years, I've been a vegetarian, and that also changed my body. So from 13, my eating disorder literally took off, and it was insane. I lost a ton of weight, and everybody noticed. They didn't know what was happening. I didn't know it was an eating disorder. At this time, I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know about anorexia. I didn't know about bulimia. I didn't know anything. I just knew what I was doing, and I thought it was, I didn't know anybody else did this or was going through this. I thought I was alone. And it was frightening, but also it gave me a power trip. And I thought I was punishing myself for not being good enough, but also it made me feel better for some reason. I've always been the hardest on myself, as I'm sure a lot of us are. And it just, for some reason, self-harm was what I turned to. And I also physically started harming my body as well. I was cutting, I was giving myself bruises, and on top of the eating disorder, which I do believe is a form of self-harm. And from that moment on, until this day, so from 13 until now, I'm 27, I've been fighting my eating disorder. And things at home were pretty tense. My dad was still always angry. My mom and I were always together. It just was a very odd living situation. And when I was 15, my parents got divorced and my mom and I moved out. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can get away with my eating disorder now. Like, my mom will have to be at work and I'll be alone, and this will be so much easier. Which is a horrible thought, but that's exactly what went through my head. And by that time, my drug and alcohol use went out of control as well. By the time I was 15, I was already, and I know I was an alcoholic and a drug addict by that time. And I remember when I was 16 and I got my car, I was so excited because I would be able to drive my friend and I out to get alcohol and to get drugs. And that was just, I can't even, looking back on that, I can't believe I did it. And my parents got divorced. We moved out. I had been seeing a therapist because my parents figured out something was wrong with me because I lost so much weight and I wasn't healthy. I visually looked like an Auschwitz survivor or not survivor. It was awful. And I remember my friend somehow opened her mouth and told my therapist that we were using drugs. Of course, we were high when she told her this, so we didn't know what we were saying. And from that time, when I was 16, my parents took away my car. I think I was 17, actually. My parents took away my car, and I went directly into rehab once I graduated high school. And I don't know how I did it, but I managed to still excel at school. I was valedictorian. I took all AP classes almost, and school had never been an issue, and that's something that I still took great pride in. However, I'm sure, and I know my friends were picking up on something just because it was obviously something was wrong. And they actually tried to do what I think now is like an intervention on me, coming over to the house and just trying to talk to me, and I wouldn't even open the door because I was so high and I didn't know that anybody knew, and I thought I was hiding it, but I wasn't. And I lost a lot of my friends that way, and I am to this day very sorry that I was so deep in my addiction that I know I hurt them. I know I did. And as an addict, I was selfish. I just wanted to get high and drink and be completely submissive to my eating disorder, and I couldn't think of anyone else besides myself. And so I went to rehab, and from that moment on, I checked myself out early because I didn't want to be there, which is a dumb move, but I was a teenager and I thought I knew best. I was in and out of hospitals constantly, and it was just awful. It was awful, and I was out of control, and I felt completely and utterly hopeless. I didn't think that I would ever recover, and I thought I was going to die that way. I tried to commit suicide the first time when I was 18, I believe, and I would later try 4 more times. I was using drugs and trying to overdose that way, and I was found every single time and brought to the hospital by a friend. And I was so angry because I remember thinking, I can't even kill myself right. I can't do anything. I can't even commit suicide correctly. And I felt like a failure, and I'm grateful now that I didn't succeed because I wouldn't be here. And it breaks my heart to know that anybody would ever feel that way. And I still remember that despair. I remember that very, very, very vividly and clearly. I know that feeling. And I can't imagine how my friends felt every time, every time. And my mom was never aware, really. She didn't know. She never drank. She never did drugs. So she was pretty naive to the whole thing and didn't know what was happening. And she actually took me to the hospital a couple times when I overdosed. I woke up from my overdose and I told her that I had just been drinking too much. And she believed me. And it was never just that, it was always drugs. And I'd wake up like a day or two later and I didn't even know where I was. And that went on, like I said, for 5 different times. When I checked myself out of rehab when I was 18, my parents bought me a townhouse in Tempe, Arizona, when I was going to go to ASU, because I got a full ride scholarship there from being valedictorian from my high school. And I couldn't quit drugs. I still kept doing drinking and drugs every single day. I let horrible people into my apartment. I didn't know them. I just knew that they had drugs, and if I let them in, that they would give them to me. I lived with my best friend at the time. We no longer have communication, but at the time she was my best friend. And I don't know what I was thinking. I really don't, because I let horrible people into my life, and I was hurt really bad. I was raped the first time when I was 18, and it was in my own house. And I was held at knife point, and it was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. And it's still hard for me to think about. And that happened a couple more times in my house. I was still addicted to the drugs and the alcohol. I was gang raped at gunpoint. And it was awful. It was just awful. I have the utmost sympathy for anyone who's ever been through sexual abuse. It never leaves you. It never does. And that's what led to a couple more suicide attempts. I just didn't know how to live with myself anymore. And when I was 19, I met my ex-husband, and we got married when I was 21. And from the very beginning, he was very abusive, and I knew it. And I felt like every man I had ever been with was abusive and angry, and my own father was angry all the time. And I thought that's just how men were, and I accepted it. So I stayed with my ex-husband for a long time, more than I should have, and endured all kinds of abuse. And I don't even know. I can't. I still remember it was my life, but then there's times when I just don't know why I didn't say anything. I was just so afraid, and I felt like I deserved it. And that was my life. It was just all consuming. And so when I was 21, I moved back home, and I don't really have the spatial awareness of time. Like, I don't remember time periods, how long things lasted, when they happened. I felt like when I moved home, it happened right away, but I got into a car accident and I got a DUI. And I remember coming home. At the time, my ex-husband and I had just moved from California back home to Arizona, and my mom offered us, a place to live with her while we were looking for an apartment. And so when I got my DUI, I remember calling my mom and telling her what happened, and I said, "Please come home. I'm afraid." I just was afraid because I knew once I got home and when I told my ex-husband what had happened, I knew that I was going to get hurt. I knew that he was going to abuse me because I fucked up. And my ex-husband, when I got home, my mom wasn't there yet. My ex-husband met me at the door, and sure enough, we went into the bedroom with him yelling at me and telling me what a fuck up I was, and I was in bad shape. And my mom walked in on him yelling at me, and she helped me get away from him. So to me, that was a God shot. I don't know how it happened, but it honestly, if I wouldn't have had her come in, I would never have left him. So from that moment on, I went completely downhill again because I felt like nothing good was ever going to happen to me. I deserved all these bad things. And I continued drinking and I continued using drugs. I had to go to jail for my DUI, and then I was on house arrest and I had a breathalyzer in my car for a year. But when I was 22, I met my current husband. And that's a God shot as well, because I never thought that I would find someone so amazing and somebody that would treat me right. I never thought that I would find that or that I deserved it. And he has helped me so much. And I went into rehab in 2013, we were together and I had to go in for my eating disorder because my eating disorder never got any better. And I was still drinking, and I was trying not to do drugs when I met him. And I knew that I had something amazing walk into my life and that I couldn't live this way anymore. That if I wanted him in my life, that I had to get better. And I had been in and out of hospitals since I was 16 to 22, just for overdoses, for everything. And I had already been in rehab, and I knew the whole song and dance. I knew it, and I did not want to go back, but I knew that I was going to die because my eating disorder had already had so much damage done to my body from everything that I had done to it. And I was told, you don't have many chances left. You need to really get serious, surrender, and go into, treatment because I was going to die. So I went into treatment, and it was an amazing experience. I met amazing women and men that I still have in my life today, and I truly adore, and they helped me find myself. And I would like to say that that was the last time I went into treatment, but it wasn't. I tried really, really hard to fight and get my life back, but I still didn't love myself, and my eating disorder crept back into my life. My husband and I now, we got married in April of last year, and I was still sick. And I knew that now I'm married, now I have a life partner, and I'm still not getting my shit together. So I went into treatment again. I went in August of last year, and I got out of PHP in December of last year. And then I was in IOP for quite a while. And now I'm still seeing a therapist. And I am a part of a program, an amazing program, and a part of an amazing family of people that I just met. And I'm still meeting. And they help me so much. And it's been a crazy life. I've had a crazy, crazy life. And there's a lot of things that I still haven't touched on quite yet in this video, but I don't want to keep rambling on, I guess. So, excuse me. I think I'll end it with that, just in terms of, my life growing up. While it might have looked good to some people on the outside, and don't get me wrong, I had 2 parents, and I had a home, I had food, and I was loved. But there's things that happen behind closed doors that people never know about, and stuff that happens on the inside that people couldn't even imagine. So the hell that was in here and the things that traumatized me is going to be different for everyone. What you may not consider trauma may be completely disheveling to someone else's life. So never compare. What somebody might think is nothing is something huge to someone else. And I've learned that. I've learned a lot in my life. And yes, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Yes, I'm a recovering drug addict. Yes, I'm recovering from my eating disorder. Yes, I still suffer with PTSD and I'm working through my traumas. And it's a long road. It's a long road. But right now I will have 9 months sober on the 3rd of July. And that's the longest I've ever had in my entire life. And I'm doing much better with things than I have in a very long time. So don't get me wrong, life is still super challenging. Life is hell some days and amazing other days. But I wouldn't change it for the world. And all the things that I've been through, now I can help other people who have been through the same thing. And I truly want you to know, whatever your story is, share it. You have no idea who out there you're going to help. Who is going to connect with your story? Who thought that their life was over and then they hear you and they have hope? So please, know that you are deserving, you are enough. Your life is out there and worth living. Killing yourself doesn't solve any problems. As much as our head tells us it will, and we feel like we're too much of a burden for people, we'd be better off dead, and that we would help them in some way, it's not true. So like I said, this is kind of all over the place, and I really hope that my story was easy to understand, but I'm going to do, like I said, more videos. Excuse me. I'm going to do more videos on, I'm going to do one about my eating disorders, one on drug and alcohol addiction. I'm going to do one touching on trauma, and I'm not sure. If you guys have some things that you want to know about or from me, let me know. Either comment below or let me know somehow on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. But I really hope that this at least spoke to someone, letting them know that there's a lot that people have been through, and you're not alone. You're definitely not alone. So I'll end with that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope it wasn't too disjointed and crazy. And I really appreciate you guys, all your support and watching my videos and everything you do. So I'll let you know when I make the next video. Thank you for watching.